At 7:14 p.m., you post a photograph. At 7:15, you check it. 12 likes. For a few seconds, it provides a hit of relief, a small confirmation that you are still visible to the world. But then someone else posts something better. Their metrics climb faster. Their comments are more glowing. Suddenly, that digital success feels like a personal subtraction from your own value, as if there is a finite amount of relevance to go around. When you rely on these metrics to gauge your worth, life becomes a scoreboard that never resets. You tell yourself that these high standards are a sign of ambition, but the constant need to check the tally suggests something more fragile is happening beneath the surface. This leads to a question that rarely gets asked aloud. If people stop noticing me, do I still matter? We typically associate narcissism with volume, the person who dominates the meeting, or the leader who expects praise. We assume it is rooted in an unshakable, perhaps even excessive, belief in oneself. But consider what happens when that same person receives a single constructive note on a presentation. Their manager offers a compliment, then points out one area that needs improvement. Instead of seeing a path for growth, the individual experiences a psychological emergency. By the time they get home, the feedback has been completely rewritten in their mind as a deliberate act of disrespect. They begin building a case against the manager, convinced the critique was actually a move to sabotage their success. This reaction highlights a lack of internal stability. Healthy self-esteem can tolerate contradiction. It allows you to be a talented professional who also happened to miss a detail. This level of defensiveness reveals a rigid identity that views being ordinary as a form of emotional death. This psychological system lacks its own power source. It cannot sustain a sense of value from the inside, so it requires a continuous stream of external input just to stay upright. This scale illustrates the volatility. When self-worth has no internal anchor, a single piece of criticism carries enough weight to tip the entire system into a freefall. To return to level, it requires a massive, disproportionate surge of praise. Everything is balanced on this single, precarious pinpoint. If the person is not perceived as exceptional in every moment, the entire structure threatens to collapse, leaving them with the sensation of being nothing at all. This makes confidence an exhausting performance. It is a state that has to be continually confirmed by an audience that must never stop applauding. Because this instability can be painful to show, it often hides behind two distinct patterns of behavior. The grandiose expression is the one we recognize. It meets a threat by getting louder, attacking the source of the criticism, and demanding the spotlight. But the vulnerable expression is often quiet. It looks like a person who is reserved or socially withdrawn, privately resenting the success of others while feeling chronically misunderstood. The vulnerable type avoids risks, not because they lack drive, but because failure would expose the distance between the person they are and the exceptional person they believe they are supposed to be. Whether it's an aggressive attack or an anxious retreat, both reactions serve the same purpose. They are attempts to regulate a self-image that cannot regulate itself. These are different ways of protecting the same underlying injury. Eventually, the cost of this internal system is felt most intensely by those in the person's immediate orbit, their partners, friends, and coworkers. In these relationships, other people slowly lose their status as independent human beings with their own needs. Instead, they are cast in the role of a mirror. A useful mirror is one that reflects constant admiration, but the moment that person expresses their own exhaustion, sets a boundary, or shows independence, they become an unpleasant mirror. They are no longer reflecting the image the narcissist needs to see. Empathy breaks down here because the narcissist's mind is occupied with a survival task. To truly understand your pain, they would have to admit fault or surrender control, actions that feel like a total destruction of their idealized self. Intimacy requires two separate people to exist at once. This system, however, can only tolerate one reality, the one where its image remains perfect and untouched. These patterns often begin in environments where love felt like a transaction. A child learns that warmth is only available when they win, when they perform, or when they are the most impressive person in the room. In other cases, a child whose genuine emotions are regularly ignored might retreat into a fantasy of future greatness. Creating an exceptional imaginary self becomes a way to feel safe in a world where their real self feels invisible. This grandiosity functions as a psychological suit of armor. It is a heavy, rigid layer designed to protect a vulnerable inner part of the self from the weight of shame and insignificance. The irony is that armor thick enough to prevent any injury is also thick enough to prevent any closeness. It keeps the world out, but it also keeps the person trapped inside, increasingly isolated from the very connection they are searching for. Change requires a step that this defensive system has spent a lifetime avoiding: an honest encounter with imperfection. It means learning to exist in a space where you are not the best or the most important person in the room. This starts with the ability to decouple your actions from your identity. You have to be able to say, "I made a mistake," without concluding, "I am worthless." Moving away from these traits means building a stable form of self-respect, a sense of value that remains steady through human limitations, errors, and the occasional silence of an audience. The goal is to look away from your own reflection long enough to notice that other people are alive too. So when your identity feels threatened, ask yourself, do you become louder or do you disappear?